There are two facts in my report, and they cannot both be true. The first, in 1100 years of registry, nothing that has touched a vorrik has lived long enough to file a record of it. The second, I watched one take meat from a human's open hand, and the hand still has all 5 fingers. I am a cataloger. My work is to make facts agree. These two will not. Let me give you the numbers first, because numbers hold still when nothing else does. The Extermination Compact is the oldest standing agreement in the Concord. 209 species are signatory. On exactly one matter do all 209 agree without exception, without review, without the usual centuries of argument that precede any shared law. The vorrik is killed on sight, not captured, not studied. There are no vorrik in any containment facility anywhere in charted space, because every attempt to build one ended the same way, and the reports from those attempts are short. Some are a single line. One is a single word, and the word is a name. The researchers entered by a colleague because there was no body left to sign. That is the creature. That is what the compact was written around. Now the second number, the one nobody puts in a compact. Of the 209 signatory species, one has a documented habit our behavioral core flagged 4 times before I was born. Humans bond, not with their own kind. Every species does that. Humans bond outward, across the line where instinct should stop them. We have footage of a human on a hostile world, oxygen running low, using the last of a stimulant meant for herself on an injured animal she had met that morning. We logged it as an anomaly. We logged it as an anomaly 3 more times. It never occurred to anyone in the Corps to log it as a danger, because the animals in question were small. The vorrik is not small. I met the human 8 days before the report I cannot file. Her designation is Anand, xenobiologist, 3rd of the human contingent attached to our survey. I remember the first thing I noticed about her, and it was nothing. That was the strange part. Our survey work is done inside a margin of fear so constant that the Sethric have a word for the specific tiredness it causes. Anand did not have it. She moved through the ship the way you move through a room you grew up in. When the proximity alarms sounded on the 4th day, every member of my crew turned toward the sound. She turned toward the reading to see what had made it. I pulled her medical baseline that night. I told myself it was routine. It was not routine. I reread it 4 times. Here's what a body does when a vorrik is near. The heart rate climbs before the conscious mind knows why. There is a compound. The fear response floods into the blood. Every signatory species produces some form of it, and the vorrik, we believe, can smell it. That is part of why contact ends the way it ends. The prey announces itself. Anand's baseline, taken the morning the pup was brought aboard, did not climb. I checked the instrument. I checked it against 2 others. The instruments were correct. Her hand had been inside the containment field, and her body had produced the reading of someone reaching into a warm cabinet for something she had left there herself. I want to be precise about the pup, because precision is the only tool I trust, and I am about to lose it. It was injured when the forward team found it. A fracture along one flank. The mother nowhere on the scan, which itself should have frightened us more than it did, because a vorrik pup alone means the thing that could kill its mother is somewhere close. Standard protocol is unambiguous. There is a single approved action, and it is not bring it aboard. Warden Oscu invoked the protocol on the forward channel. He was still invoking it when Anand's voice came over the same channel, calm, asking a question instead of answering him. She asked how much the flank fracture would hurt. I have replayed that transmission more times than I will admit. In an official document, Oscu is security. His voice does not move. Hers did not move either, but for the opposite reason, not discipline, something I did not have a category for yet. She was not being brave. Bravery has a sound, and I know it, and this was not it. She simply did not appear to have received the fear the rest of us were built to feel. And into the space where that fear should have been, she had put a question about whether a monster's broken bone was causing it pain. The pup came aboard. I logged my objection. I logged Oscu's. The record shows both of us on the correct side of 1100 years of law. By the second night, it would not settle unless she was in the compartment. By the fourth, it had a name, because she gave it one, the way her species gives names to anything they intend to keep. I did not understand then what I had started to record. I thought I was documenting a mistake, a soft-hearted xenobiologist, an animal that would eventually do what its kind always does, a report I would file with a heavy note and a recommendation. That is what my training told me I was watching. My training was wrong about which of them was the dangerous one, because the pup was not the anomaly on that ship. I had the anomaly's medical baseline open on my console, read 4 times, and I still had not seen it. It would be another 3 days before I understood that the frightening thing was never going to be the creature at all. It was going to be her. It was going to be her, but Oscu came for the pup first. He came on the 7th day, and he came correctly. That is the part I need you to understand about Warden Oscu, because everything he did later only means something if you know he was right to begin with. He did not storm the compartment. He filed a request for a lethal action review, cited the protocol by its full designation, and attached the flank fracture scan as evidence that the animal was recovering, which, under the compact, is not a reason to spare a vorrik. It is a reason to hurry. The review is a formality. On this one subject, the Corps does not deliberate. Oscu knew that. He was not asking permission. He was creating a record that showed he had done everything in order before he did the only thing there was to do. 6 of us stood in the observation ring above the med bay when he came down to do it. That is the number that matters here. 6 plus Anand plus the thing in the field. We were there because a lethal action on a vorrik, even a small one, even a bandaged one, is not something the Corps lets a single warden perform alone. 2 more secure the compartment. 1 records. I was the one who records. Oscu stopped at the edge of the containment field and spoke to Anand, not to the animal. "It doesn't belong here," he said. "You know this." "I know the rule," she said. "The rule is the species, 29 crews. That is how many the vorrik have ended inside registered space. 29. He let the number sit. He was good at that. You are asking me to make yours the 30th. I'm not asking you for anything." That was the pause. The calculated one the Corps trains its wardens to give before an audience. Except she had taken it from him. Above us, in the ring, I watched 2 of my crewmates lean without meaning to. There is an anticipation reflex that fires before violence, and it fired then, 6 bodies shifting a half-degree toward the glass. Oscu keyed his weapon. The field would drop for exactly as long as the shot required. This is choreography. The Corps has performed 29 times and lived to file 0 of, and every one of us in that ring knew the sequence. Field down. The animal registers the gap. The animal moves. The shot has to land inside the fraction of a second before the animal reaches the hand that dropped the field. We knew it would move toward Oscu. They always move toward the nearest warm thing. That is the whole horror of them. The field dropped. The pup moved. It moved toward Anand, not at her. That distinction is the entire chapter, so I will spend a word on it. A vorrik closing on prey does a specific thing with its forelimbs that I had only ever seen in archived footage, and I braced to see it, my recording focus already tightening on her throat, because that is where the file would need the evidence. It did not do the thing. It crossed the dropped field, put its full weight against her side, and pushed its head under her arm, into the gap, the sheltered angle, the place a smaller animal goes when a larger one it trusts is between it and a threat. The threat was Oscu. The larger animal it trusted was her. Nobody fired. Oscu's weapon was live. The field was down. The shot was clean, and nobody fired because the sequence we had all rehearsed in our heads had no frame for what was in front of us. I recorded a warden with a lethal solution and no target, because the target had decided he was one, and the monster had decided she was home. 4 seconds, Anand said. She had not moved. Her hand was on the pup's flank, over the fracture, careful of it. That's all I wanted. The field came back up. Oscu had raised it himself. He left. The record ends with a compartment door and Oscu's back, and my focus still tight on a bandaged animal that had chosen, in front of 6 armed witnesses, to hide behind the softest thing in the room. I filed the recording. I did not file a recommendation because I no longer knew which one was correct. That is the small thing that happened on the 7th day, and it should have been the end of it. 1 Warden's Review, denied by the animal itself. A strange note in a survey no one important reads. It did not stay small. Oscu's review had a designation, and designations propagate. Somewhere 3 jumps behind us, a clerk in a directorate office opened a routine feed, saw the word vorrik attached to the word aboard attached to the word living, and did what clerks do with a thing that should not exist. She sent it up. None of us on that ship knew the name Nemel yet. We would. 9 days after the clerk sent it up, the summons came without warning, and it did not come to the ship. It came to a hearing. The directorate does not travel. When it wishes to examine you, it opens a channel, and you are examined across the distance, which the Corps considers a mercy, and I have come to consider a kind of theater. We were assembled in the survey's forward bay. Anand, Oscu, myself as recording officer, and the animal, which was no longer quite a pup. In 2 weeks it had put on a third of its length. Biscuit, she called it, in front of the adjudicator, and I watched the word land on the channel like a dropped tool. Let me give you the directorate in numbers, because that is how it prefers to be understood. It has ruled on 8,000 contested findings in the current cycle. Its overturn rate on appeal is under 1%. It has never, not once in the standing record, declined to enforce the Extermination Compact when a vorrik was the subject. You may keep the animal, he said, under one condition. You will demonstrate on this channel that it is not what the compact says it is. You will drop the containment field in the presence of a stress subject, and you will show me an apex predator declining to be one. If it declines, the finding is yours. If it does not, he let the pause do its work, and it was a good pause. I will grant him that. Then the recording will serve as the evidence for the action that follows, and the officer's kind file becomes its footnote. It was rigged, and everyone on the channel knew the shape of the rig. A vorrik with the field down, near a body producing fear compound on command, does one thing. Nemo was not asking for a demonstration. He was asking us to film the proof of his verdict and hand it to him. Anand asked a clarifying question. Which stress subject? Any of your complement, Nemo said. The warden, perhaps. His baseline is on file. It will read true. No, she said. I mean, do you want the demonstration you asked for, or the one that's true? Because they're not the same, and I can give you either. The channel went quiet. Oscu turned his head a fraction toward her, which for Oscu is a shout. Explain the distinction, Nemo said, and his sentence had shortened, which told me more than the words did. You want the field down near someone afraid, she said. That tells you what the animal does to fear. It doesn't tell you what the animal does. Those are different questions. You've written the compact around the first one for 1,100 years. Nobody's filed the second, because nobody survived too, Nemo said. Somebody did. She nodded to me. It's in his logs, not the fight logs, the quiet ones, the overnight behavioral capture. You skipped to the recording of the review. Go back to the nights before it. I had the logs. Of course I had the logs. I am a cataloger. I capture everything, most of it never read by anyone including me. Nemo requested them on the channel, as was his right, and for 4 long minutes the hearing became the driest thing imaginable. An adjudicator reading overnight sensor capture, timestamp by timestamp, of an animal in a compartment. Here is what the quiet logs showed, and it is the fact that broke the room. Though the room was a channel, and its breaking was silent, it was not tolerating her. It was keeping watch on the direction she'd gone, and sleeping only once she was back inside the wall of the ship with it. Nemo read all of it. When he spoke again, the upholstery was gone from his voice. You will still perform the demonstration, he said. The logs are noted. They are not a ruling. Then set it up. Anand said, I'll stand in the room. My baseline's on file too. Read it against the wardens afterward. You are not afraid of it, Nemo said. That, not a valid stress subject. I know, she said. That's the demonstration. He did not rule that day. An adjudicator who does not rule is a small thing and an enormous one. The record shows a continuance, which the directorate had not entered on a vorrik matter in the length of the standing archive. I filed it with my hand steady and my certainty gone. What I did not see was the second channel. every directorate hearing feeds a summary upward automatically to any standing body with an interest. There is exactly one body with a standing interest in the word vorrik. The compact had been listening the whole time. Overseer Dathru arrived in person, which the directorate never does, which was the first thing that told us the continuance had frightened someone. She walked the survey deck with 2 inspectors a pace behind her and a data slate she never looked at because she already knew what it said. Senior corps officers of her grade do not travel to read, they travel to be seen deciding. I logged her boarding, her grade, her 2 inspectors, and the specific way she did not look at the containment compartment as she passed it, the careful not looking of someone who has already decided that what's inside does not warrant her eyes. "I've reviewed the continuance," she told Anand, "in the forward bay, with the inspectors positioned to record. Adjudicator Nemel is thorough. He is also 3 jumps away, ruling on sensor logs and a scientist's affection. I am here. I will rule on what I see." She let that settle. "You will demonstrate the animal in the open, not behind a field. In this bay, with my inspectors present. If it is what you claim, it will cost you nothing to prove it standing next to me." That was the trap, and it was a better one than Nemel's. Nemel had asked us to film a monster near fear. Dathru was asking Anand to release a grown vorrik into a room containing a senior officer who had all... "The field stays up," Osku said. Everyone turned. It was the first time in the record that Warden Osku had spoken against a ruling from a grade above his own. "Warden," Dathru said, "your review request is in the file. You wanted this animal dead on the 7th day. Has the scientist's affection reached you as well?" "No," Osku said. Clipped. "True. My assessment hasn't changed. It is a vorrik. It could open this bay end to end before your inspectors finished a sentence." He paused, and the pause was not for effect. It was a man choosing the next words against his own record. "But I've watched it for 3 weeks. It has had the field down twice. Both times it moved toward her and away from every other warm thing in the room. If you put it in the open next to you, Overseer, you are not testing whether it is dangerous. It is dangerous. You are testing whether it wants you. And it doesn't know you. I would not stake your throat on an animal's opinion of a stranger. I want to mark this in the record precisely, because it is the beat the whole survey turned on, and no one dramatized it. This was not Osku changed. This was Osku accurate. A security warden who still believed every word of the compact, telling a superior officer that her test was badly built. He had come to kill it. He was now the one arguing for caution on its behalf, and he did it without softening a single fact about what it was. That is a harder thing than affection. Affection is easy. Osku had simply looked at 3 weeks of evidence and refused to unsee it. Dathru's not looking changed. She looked at Osku now. "You're a third party to her file," she said slowly. "You have no cause to shield the animal. You filed to destroy it. I did, and you'll testify to what you saw, on the record. Both times the field dropped. I will." So the demonstration did not happen. It was replaced by something Dathru had not planned, and could not refuse without looking like she feared the answer. A witness, not the scientist whose file was compromised by proximity. The warden who had wanted it dead, describing under record exactly what he had watched it do, the medbay, the review, the door it leaned on every night, the direction it kept. A hostile witness is the only kind. "This is not a ruling," she said finally. "This is a delay. The continuance stands. But, understand me." And here she looked, at last, at the compartment, straight at it. "I have now placed on the standing record that a corps warden testified a vorrik distinguishes between individuals. That will not stay on this survey. Do you understand what you have made me write?" "I understand what happened," Osku said. "I only reported it." She left within the hour. Her report went where senior reports go, up and out, to everybody with an interest, and this time it did not carry a scientist's soft file or a cataloger's kind note. It carried the sworn word of a security warden who'd requested the kill. That is the version that travels. That is the version bodies act on. Dathru had come to close the matter quietly. What she filed instead was the first official document in 1100 years to state, in the Corps' own coldest voice, that the thing everyone kills on sight can tell one of us from another. She did not know how far that sentence would go. It would reach a table she had never sat at, in a chamber that had already begun to convene, over a question none of us had thought to ask yet. If the vorrik can choose, then who taught it that it was allowed to? The sentence reached the Clith before it reached the Compact, and the Clith sent an envoy to argue with it. We met them at a survey rendezvous 3 jumps forward. A neutral marker, the kind of empty coordinate where 2 contingents dock nose to nose and pretend the space between them is not a wall. The Clith had asked for the meeting through channels that skipped the directorate entirely, which should have warned us. Species do not skip the directorate to discuss an animal. They skip it to discuss a threat. Envoy Sarek came aboard with a retinue and a grievance, and the grievance had a number attached, because the Clith attach numbers to grief the way other species attach flowers. 416, Sarek said, before introductions, before the seating, before anything. That is the Clith figure. 416 of my people, across our recorded contact with the vorrik. I have the manifest of every one. I can read you the name. Anon did not answer it quickly. She looked at the scrolling column of the dead for a long moment, and I logged that her baseline, for the first time in my file, climbed, not from the animal, from the names. "May I see the manifest?" she said. "The full one, not the count, the entries, locations, dates, the contact circumstances." "You wish to audit my dead," Sarek said. "I wish to read what your own record says happened. You brought it. You said you'd read me every name. Let me read them instead." He allowed it, because refusing would have looked like fear of his own data, and the Clith do not permit themselves that. His retinue opened the manifest to her. She read. I read over her shoulder because that is my function, and I am the reason I can tell you what she found. The 416 were real. Every name, every date. But the manifest carried a field the Clith count had summed away, contact circumstance, and Anand read down that column instead of the names, and, after a while, she stopped and turned it so Sarek could see the thing his own arithmetic had buried. "Denning," she said, 391 of your 416, your own field, your own word, 391 contacts, logged as Denning, a vorrik with young, or a vorrik near young." She moved down. 19 more logged as provisioned kill defense, 6 as unclassified. Your record doesn't show a monster hunting Clith across 1100 years, envoy. It shows Clith surveys walking into vorrik nurseries 400 times, and a mother doing the one thing every species at this table would die doing. The table was very quiet. Sarek's retinue did not move, which is how you know a Clith has been struck, because their stillness is the tell, the way a fading smile is ours. "You are recasting my dead as intruders," Sarek said, and his voice had thinned. "I'm reading the column you summed," she said. "You counted the names and skipped the circumstance. I understand why. 416 is a number you can carry to a rendezvous. We kept surveying dens after we knew what dens cost is a number you have to carry home." It should have felt like a victory. It did not, because as the Clith unmoored and I logged the rendezvous closed, the long-range array flagged a contact we had not invited and did not recognize, a hull profile stripped of registry, running dark, that had been holding at the edge of scan range for the entire meeting. The system tagged it against the radar index and returned one designation, Draxel. They had been listening too. And unlike the Clith, unlike Nemo, unlike Dathru, the Draxel had not come to argue about what the animal was. They had come to take the humans who kept it. The Draxel did not attack that day. They held at the edge of scan and let us run, which is a thing predators do when they are not hungry yet, and I logged it as a raider's patience. I was wrong about that, too. They were not being patient. They were being early. They had come before the thing they were waiting for, and the thing they were waiting for was a document. I found the document because I am a cataloger, and a cataloger's revenge on a universe that keeps surprising him is to read the files no one assigns. Our survey had an origin order. Every survey does. The authorization that spawns it, filed at the top and copied down through the grades until it reaches a ship. I had read ours on the day I boarded, the way you read the label on a thing you'll never question. Standard xenobiological sweep, core word margin, duration, and complement, and the usual dry seals. I had filed it and forgotten it, because origin orders are the most boring documents in existence, and that is precisely why no one reads them twice. I read ours twice the night after the Clith left, because I could not sleep, because a stripped hull was pacing us in the dark, and I wanted to feel the floor of something certain under me. So I opened the origin order to remind myself the survey was ordinary. The survey was not ordinary. Every authorization carries a requesting body, the office that wanted the work done. A xenobiological sweep is requested by a science directorate. Ours was not. The requesting seal on our origin order belonged to a body that does not commission surveys, has never commissioned a survey, and exists for one purpose. And I sat very still when I read its name, because I finally understood the shape of the 8 days I had spent thinking I was watching a scientist make a mistake. The Extermination Compact had commissioned us. The Compact does not study. It kills on sight, that is its entire function. It has no science directorate because it has no questions. And yet it had reached down through 1100 years of never asking and quietly ordered a survey into the coreward margin complement to include a human contingent, timing to coincide with a season the attached ecological. They had sent us where the vorrik raise their young with humans aboard in denning season, and then waited to see what the humans would do. I understood then that Anand had never been the anomaly in my report. She had been the variable, the one species in the registry that bonds outward, dropped by design into the one place the galaxy's apex predator could be found, small and injured and alone. Nemel's rigged review, Dathru's forced demonstration, the continuances that had never once been granted before, none of them were the core failing to enforce the compact. They were the core taking readings. Every hearing was an instrument. My kind, thorough, befriended file was not a document the Directorate tolerated. It was data the compact had requisitioned before I knew I was writing it. And the question they were measuring was not, is this animal safe? I saw that now, with the origin seal glowing on my console and a Draxel hull ghosting our stern. The question was older and worse, and it changed the size of everything. Can the vorrik be directed? 1,100 years, 209 species, and one law they all agreed on because the alternative was unthinkable. An apex predator that could not be reasoned with, could not be held, could not be turned. That law was the floor everyone stood on. And somewhere in the compact, someone had begun to wonder what would happen to that floor if it turned out the thing could be turned. If a creature the whole Concord had agreed to exterminate could be made to choose a side. If the reason no one had ever weaponized the vorrik was not that it was impossible, but that no one had ever put the right species in the room. The stakes had never been Anand's. They had never been biscuits. I had spent 8 days filing a story about a soft scientist and a monster with a foolish name, and the whole time I had been standing inside a much larger question with my back to it. If the answer the compact got was yes, if the reading came back that human could point a vorrik, then no signatory would ever again believe the extermination law was about safety. They would understand it had always been about access, and the first fleet to secure that access would not need to conquer anyone. It would need only to conquer the things everyone else was still killing on sight. The Draxel were not raiders who had stumbled onto a soft crew with a pet. The Draxel had read the same origin order I had. They had come to steal the variable before the compact finished measuring it, to take the human who could do the thing, and with her, she was already awake. She was in the compartment, with the field down, sitting against the wall the animal always chose, and the animal, grown now, its head level with hers, was between her and the door, watching the direction of the stern, where the Draxel were. It had not read the origin order. It did not need to. It already knew which way the threat was coming from. They came at the ship's dim hour, which is when raiders come, because they had read our schedule the same way they'd read our origin order. I need to tell this part carefully, because most of what I know of it I know from the helmet cams. And the helmet cams do not lie the way memory does. When the Directorate later demanded evidence, it was this footage they demanded. Not my logs, not Osku's word, but the raw capture from 4 crew helmets during the 11 minutes the Draxel were aboard. I have watched all 4 passes more times than is healthy. I will give you what they show in the order they show it, because the order is the only mercy in it. The Draxel breached at the aft lock. Reaver Gost led. I know the name now. His own cam, recovered after, announced it. The Draxel do not conceal themselves once committed. They had come for one thing, and they said so on the open channel, in Concord Standard, so we would understand the human, not the ship, not the cargo, the variable and the animal both intact, because a dead variable measures nothing. They expected soft prey. That was in Gost's voice. On his own cam, the specific ease of a predator who has priced the room and found it cheap. Humans who name monsters. Wardens gone sentimental. He moved through our aft compartments like a thing that had already won and was only walking to collect. Oscu met them at the first junction. And here is the setback. And I will not soften it, because section discipline in my own head demands I record the cost before I record the reveal. Oscu went down. The cam that caught it was mine. I had gone aft when the breach alarm sounded, against every protocol for a recording officer, because I had stopped being only a cataloger somewhere around the 7th day and had not admitted it. The field was down. I did not know that. Anand had dropped it herself before they breached, and the footage is the only reason I understand why. She had not dropped it to hide behind the animal. Watch the 4 cams together and you see it. The animal was not in front of her. She had put herself in front of the hatch, and the animal was loose in the dark of the compartment, unfielded, uncommanded, and she had made herself the thing worth reaching for. She had made herself the bait, and Biscuit the thing the bait was guarding. Gost's hand closed on her arm. I have watched what the vorrik did next at quarter speed, at 1/8 speed, frame by frame, and I still cannot narrate it as a sequence, because it did not happen as a sequence. It happened as a decision that had already been made weeks earlier in a medbay, when a bandaged pup crossed a dropped field toward the softest thing in the room. The compact was written around what a vorrik does to fear. No one had ever filed what a vorrik does to threat against the thing it guards, because the only species who'd been in a position to see it had walked into dens and never walked out to write it down. Gost's cam ends there. All 3 radar cams end within the same 4 seconds. I will not describe what fills the last frames of them. It is why the directorate viewed the footage in a sealed session. And it is why Sarek's 416 suddenly read, to every species that later saw this capture, not as a monster's tally, but as 416 answers to the same question Gost had just asked with his hand. 11 minutes. Then the compartment was quiet, and the ship was ours, and the human was standing exactly where she had put herself, unmarked, one hand now resting flat on the flank of the thing between her and a door that no longer had anyone alive on the other side of it. I went back to Oscu with the med corpse. He was still breathing. He is the reason there is a witness besides the cams, because he woke 3 days on, and the first thing the warden, who had filed to kill it, asked was whether it had gotten to her. It had not. It had gotten to everyone who tried. The footage went up within the hour. Mine, Oscu's, the 3 radar cams recovered from what was left. It did not go to Nemel this time. It did not go to Dathru. A breach, a boarding, a dead radar reaver, and a vorrik that had chosen a side in a fight over whether it could choose a side. That goes to exactly 1 table. The compact convened. The compact does not convene. In 1100 years it has done so 4 times, and I had to look up the count, because Arbiter Vess presided. The compact's presiding voice is not elected and not named until the moment they speak. It is a function more than a person, and Vess spoke as the function. This body exists for one purpose, Vess said, to hold a line no signatory may cross alone. The line is simple. The vorrik is not negotiated with, it is not held, it is not turned. On this, the Concord has never disagreed, because the alternative, a predator that could be directed, is a weapon no floor could survive. A pause, and it was not a theatrical pause. The function does not perform. We are here because a survey this body commissioned has returned a reading. And the reading is yes, the chamber did not break the way a room breaks. 209 species do not gasp. What happened was slower and worse to sit inside, a long settling seat by seat, as each delegation understood in its own time that the floor they were standing on had just been declared testable and had failed. There is a motion before this body, Vess continued. It has two parts. The first, that the animal be destroyed, here, in this chamber, as the compact requires and has always required. On that part, there is little argument. Vess let it sit. The second is the part that has convened us. The motion holds that the human contingent and the individual Anand represent a demonstrated capability to direct the vorrik, and that this capability cannot be permitted to exist unheld any more than the vorrik itself can. The motion proposes that the human, like the animal, be classified as an instrument of the compact, secured, studied, not free. I understood then that Anand had never been on trial for keeping a monster. She was on trial for being the answer to the question, and the compact's instinct was the same for the answer as for the animal. A thing this dangerous is not permitted to walk around loose. You commissioned the survey, Anand said. It was not a question, and the chamber turned to her, because evidence had spoken. You put humans in a denning margin in denning season to see if we do exactly this. You already knew what your reading would be before you sent us. So unseal it, the whole origin file, not the seal I read, the findings. You've been measuring more than this survey. Vess could have refused. The function has the authority to seal anything, but 209 delegations were watching, and a refusal in that chamber, on that record, would have said more than the file could. So the compact unsealed its own findings, and the chamber read, in the compact's own cold hand, 3 prior authorizations across 90 years, each one a quiet survey, each one a human contingent placed near something the Concord had agreed to fear, each one asking the same question in a smaller voice until this one had asked it loud enough to get an answer. The chamber read it. The delegations that had come to vote for a clean destruction sat with the knowledge that the destruction had been ordered before the crime, and that the crime had been designed. Vess let them finish reading. Then the function did the thing that turned a hearing into a countdown. The unsealing is noted. It does not vacate the motion, a pause. This body will vote on both parts at the next chamber cycle, the animal and the instrument. Until then, the containment field holds, and the human does not leave this station. The function's voice did not rise. It never had. One cycle. Then 209 species decide whether a thing that can be directed is permitted to remain unheld. The animal and the one who holds it. One cycle. That was the clock now. Not a verdict, a deadline, with a full field vorrik at the edge of the chamber, and the woman who had bonded it forbidden to leave the room where they meant to destroy them both. And I understood, cataloging it, that the vote would not turn on the footage or the findings or Oscu's flat, certain voice. It would turn on what the animal did when they finally, in front of all of them, dropped the field on purpose to prove it could not be trusted. They were going to give it the chance to be the monster. In front of everyone. At the next chamber cycle, they dropped the field on purpose. The chamber had voted on process before it voted on fate. The compact would not condemn the animal on footage alone. Anand's own argument in the prior cycle had made footage suspect, since footage can be a fiction wearing a cataloger's timestamp. So the chamber demanded the thing itself, a live demonstration. The vorrik, unfielded, in the open, in a chamber containing the delegates of every species it had ever been agreed, must die. If it did what its kind does, if it moved toward the nearest warm thing, if it showed the chamber the four-limb motion the archives all held, then the vote was a formality and both parts of the motion carried, the animal destroyed, the instrument secured. They had built the perfect trigger, not a rig this time. The truth, a grown vorrik, loose, in a room full of fear it could smell, and every instinct 1100 years had catalogued, pointing one direction. Vess gave the order. The field came down. I want to describe the room in the half-second after, because it is the last time the chamber was what it had always been. 209 delegations, and the fear compound must have filled that space like weather, because every species there produces it, and every species there was producing it at once. A vorrik in a cloud of that has never, in the standing record, done anything but hunt. The archives are unanimous. The Clith Manifest is unanimous. 1100 years are unanimous. The animal stood. It did not move toward the delegates. It did not move toward Vess, who was nearest, whose baseline the chamber's instruments must have been screaming. It turned its head once, a slow, deliberate scan of a room full of the most concentrated fear it had ever stood inside, and it read that fear the way it had read the direction of the stern, the way it had read the lean door, and it made a decision it had already made in a med bay weeks before and simply kept making. It crossed the open chamber to Anand. It put its weight against her side. It pushed its head under her arm, into the sheltered angle, the place a thing goes when a larger thing it trusts is between it and everything else. And then it turned so that its body was between the woman and the 209, and it went still, and its respiration dropped into the pattern the MedCorp's files undersecured. It had walked through a room built entirely of the thing it was designed to hunt, and it had chosen, in front of all of them, to guard. Here is the beat I have watched most, and I will give it to you at the speed I watch it. Nobody spoke. The chamber that does not gasp did not gasp. What moved through it instead was a reordering. I could see it travel, delegation by delegation, the way I had watched disbelief spread through a med bay observation ring on the 7th day, except this was 209 species recalculating at once. because every one of them had come into that chamber holding the same fact. It had not been directed. That was the reveal, and it landed on the chamber slower and heavier than any number in the survey. The compact's terror had been that the animal could be pointed, that a human could aim it, and that whoever held that aim held a weapon no floor survived. But nothing in that chamber had aimed it. Anand had not commanded it, had not signaled it, had stood unarmed, and let the room drop the field, and let the animal decide in front of everyone. And it had decided the way it decided: the door, the direction, the reaver's hand, not by being turned, but by choosing what it loved and standing in front of it. That was worse than a weapon, or the delegates who had come to vote for control. A weapon can be secured, a weapon can be classified, held, taken, but a thing that cannot be pointed and yet chooses a side on its own, a thing that looked at the arithmetic of a whole galaxy agreeing to kill it and answered by loving one person back, that cannot be held, because there is nothing to hold. There is only the choice, and the choice was not theirs to secure. It had never been Anand's to give. I looked at Vess. The function that does not perform stood with its delegation's instrument still screaming fear into a chamber where the thing they feared had lain down to keep a scientist warm, and for the first time in the record, the presiding voice of the Extermination Compact had nothing prepared to say. Anand did the thing I had watched her do since the 7th day. She did not gloat. She did not turn the moment on the chamber, did not name what everyone had just failed to make happen. She put her hand flat on the animal's flank, over the old flank scar where a fracture had healed, and she looked up at 209 species who had convened to destroy what she was touching. You asked if it could be directed, she said. Plain, flat, the whole chamber leaning to hear it. It can't, it just picked me. A pause that was hers, not a warden's, not an adjudicator's. You spent 1100 years learning what it does to the ones who come at it afraid. Nobody wrote down what it does for the one who came at it kind. She was quiet a moment. I did. It's in his logs. The compact did not vote to destroy the animal. It did not vote to secure the woman. It did not, in the end, vote at all. A body convened to hold a line does not know the procedure for a line that has quietly walked away on its own. And Vess, the function that does not perform, adjourned the chamber without a motion carried, which the standing record had no precedent for either. I filed that too. My file for this survey is the strangest document in the core archive. It is also, I'm told, the most requested. In the weeks that followed, the shape of things changed the way large things change. Not in the chamber, where nothing was decided, but out in the quiet grades below it, where the actual weight of the Concord is carried. Warden Oscu recovered. The MedCorp designation moved from survivable uncertain to return to duty, 3 jumps and 40 days from the junction he had held, and he came back to the survey without ceremony, because ceremony is not a thing he owns. I watched him, the first shift back, walk past the compartment where a grown vorrik lay against a wall, and I watched him stop. and I watched the warden who had filed on the 7th day to have the thing destroyed stand for a moment at the edge of a field that was, by then, almost never raised. He did not speak to it. He is not sentimental. He never became sentimental. That was never what happened to him. He only looked a long time at a fact he had refused to unsee, and then went to his post. His assessment, when the Corps finally asked him to amend it for the record, was one line. It is a vorrik. It chooses. He would not add a third sentence. I have come to think the refusal to soften it is the most he has ever said. Anand took a new posting. The Corps offered her a chair, a study directorate, a title, a lifetime of being the one who could do the thing, and she declined it, which surprised everyone but me. She went back to the Corward margin instead, to another survey, another denning season, with a request filed ahead of her that I logged and did not fully understand until later. That the season's injured be brought to her before they were dispatched. Not the vorrik specifically, the injured. Whatever the margin turned up small and broken and alone. She had never been, I finally understood, a woman who bonded with a monster. She was a woman who bonded outward, and the monster had only been the largest thing that instinct had ever reached across. She would keep reaching. It was not courage, and it was not softness. It was simply what her species did when no one had built the fear into them, and I had spent a whole survey mistaking it for a mistake. Biscuit grew. That is the plainest sentence in this account, and I have chosen it deliberately, because the thing the archives call an extinction-grade predator became, in the record I keep, a creature that grew, that put on length, and settled into a calm, that unnerved every crew that rotated aboard until they had watched it a week, and then unnerved them differently, because a calm vorrik is a thing the galaxy had agreed could not exist.